There's 9 minutes past 12. You are listening to the Mid Morning Talk on Salam Media, and it's time for our panel discussion. On today's discussion, we are talking sustainable and eco friendly fashion. The overproduction and overconsumption of cheaply made clothing are killing the planet, animals, and people living in it. The rise of fast fashion over the last 2 decades made us consider clothes as disposable commodities. Fashion is the second largest polluting industry in the world. The second largest. If you did not know, now you know, and let that sink in. It produces massive amounts of waste, pollution, and greenhouse gases every year. It's time to take an action and drive change in the global textile and apparel industry. And let's start by asking the right questions. And joining me right now are my guests. I have Iman Montayre from the Philippines, who is the founder of the first Philippines Modest Fashion Week and Modest Fashion Manila organization. Assalamu alaikum, Iman. Iman, you're currently on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Okay. Walaikum salam, Maryam, and to our audience around.
And with me is also Regine Guevara. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Regine Guevara from the Philippines. Regine, good day to you.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. I'm from Morocco right
Walaikum
now.
salam. Awesome. And we are waiting for one more guest. Or wait, we do have her on the phone. Do we have her on the phone? Okay, not yet, but we will be joined by Maryam Nilofa Avesta from the Iran. We're waiting for her to join us, but we will continue with Regine and Iman. So, ladies, let me start with you, Iman. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do what you do in the fashion industry.
And again, assalamu alaikum to our audience. My name is Iman. I'm from the Philippines, and I founded first Philippine modest fashion shows here. We started it in 2021, and as a fashion designer, I've been designing for almost 21 years. I started since I was 18, and this topic today about sustainable fashion is really close to my heart because when I was started when I was starting my career, I've been exposed to this. You know, like we've been utilizing sustainable materials from our local environment. We use fibers from pineapple. We use eggshells for our what do you call that, home decors. We utilize all these products that we see that's been discarded by human consumptions into something usable. And yes, as a fashion designer, I I feel like it's the burden is placed up on us as creatives to do something. And again, as you mentioned earlier, that fashion is one of the biggest polluters of the planet, and it's time, I think, that we have to step up and do something about it in
Hmm.
creative ways. Yep.
Hmm. Right. So thank you, Iman. Regine, what about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the industry.
Thank you, Mariam, and hi, Iman. Thank you so much for bringing me to this venue. My name is Regine, and I'm producer of youth and women-led media called Asia TV and Africa TV, which is why I alternate between the Philippines and Morocco. And our vision is to promote the sustainable development goals through creative industry. So, of course, fashion and the modest fashion industry are instrumental to that. So prior to that, I was also somehow involved in the media. I was fashion contributor for my very first magazine gig was actually for Zilzer Life for Muslim millennials. It was a startup by Malaysian brothers and sisters, And eventually I found my way to a travel magazine in the Philippines, where I was able to move from um, Istanbul Modest Islamic Modest Fashion Week to what was recently the Metaverse Fashion Week. So I think that's where really I am right now, like as media, trying to see how the different worlds meet, from mainstream fashion, where I started as a teenager. I used to be in my younger years. Also, like my mom, like I was in the runway. And then when I converted to Islam, alhamdulillah, I was also, I became part of the modest fashion industry. And then
Hmm.
now we're exploring what does all of these mean in a Web 4.0 new world. So that's where I think I can contribute to this conversation.
All right, and mashallah. Now we're talking about sustainable fashion today. I mean, we all love fashion, but sometimes we don't know what is sustainable. You know, we just see things
Yep.
popping up, and then we're
Um,
like, "Hey, that used to be here like 20 years ago. My mom used to wear that, etc., and now it's back." Now, what is sustainable fashion to you, and what makes it different in the fashion industry, Iman?
I think when we speak about, when we talk about sustainable fashion, it's been like for, I've been hearing that a lot, and I think we misdefined it, or we really we keep defining it, but we don't, like the common people don't understand it well. I think that what how I want to approach and tell people about sustainable fashion is to ask themselves, especially those creators and manufacturers, to ask these questions, such like, number one, are we exploiting our resources? Like resources, we talk about the material resources, and second is the manpower resources. Are we paying enough? Are we paying enough to our artisans who are doing this, like this crafts that made fashion sustainable? And the
Mm,
materials, are we exploiting it to the point that we are destroying the habitat of you know organisms that live in it? For example, we have, if you know about lotus silk, right? We
mm-hmm,
are harvesting it in Cambodian rivers that they are growing. So they said that it cannot be sustainable, although it is sustainable, but in the long years, if it's the demand is going to be high, then it's not going to be sustainable anymore, because we will run out of supply. And then the one of the organisms, or the living organisms, that will be affected by over harvesting of this plants will be the fishes that are living under the water, that
mm-hmm,
are relying on the food that they get from this um, these plants. And second questions would be, are we making products that destroy the environment? You know, it's is it toxic? Is it toxic to us humans? And number three is, how much waste is it generating? And number four, where will it end up to? Is it going to be to end up in the landfill, or can we recycle it?
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's for me. Defining sustainable fashion is kind of very broad, and people will understand. So I rather ask those questions that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm. All right. Regine, on your side, what are your thoughts and what makes sustainable fashion different in the fashion industry?
Well, I agree with Mariam. I think it's very broad. Like if we talk about sustainability in general, not just in fashion, and if we try to be guided by the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN that I was mentioning a while ago, sustainability is really about the nexus, which includes planet. Like Mariam said, it's very much important to like look at rethinking plastic, reducing our waste, maybe even trying to think about in our operations, maybe especially for big fashion industries, how do we utilize energy. We have, increasing movements around using solar panels in our regions.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in a Web 4.0 world, I was trying to talk about crypto and metaverse a while ago. The threats of climate change is real. And we have good examples in the Philippines. We have Phoenix, and then here in Morocco, there's Alfaides. Both of them use fabric waste, repurpose fabric waste into upscale luxury, semi-luxury items. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, apart from planet, I just wanted to add the four other pillars of sustainability, which includes people, empowering the producers. Do we work with disadvantaged women and try to bridge the gaps in our own way? Because sustainability will not really be holistic if we do not try to bridge the gap between people to people and people to planet. And then there's profitability, because of course, it's at the end of the day, fashion industry is still a business model, and we have to work closely with the private sector. Fourth is peace. I can imagine Iman and also Aziza, a lot of designers from the southern part of the Philippines can resonate with this, like how fashion industries or creative industries in general contribute to people um, peace building. And like myself, when I embraced Islam, the modest fashion industry was one of those that welcomed me, and I felt at ease in slowly trying to understand the different versions and schools of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then fifth would be partnerships. So that's people, planet, profit, peace, and then partnerships, which is basically about how all of these four interrelate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I think that makes sustainable fashion actually broad, not just about going green, but beyond that.
Mm-hmm, definitely. We're going to talk about the modest fashion industry a little bit, but I'd like to get Maryam Avesta on the line, who's joining us. Maryam, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. I'm really grateful to be here with you guys.
Alhamdulillah, shukran for taking the time to join us. Now, quickly, what is sustainable fashion to you and what makes it different in the fashion industry? I'm sure you've heard what Regine and Iman had to say.
Yeah, I think modest fashion, especially in the field of sustainability, is very important to just to know that each fashion designer has to be conscious about the earth, about the consume, and be very careful not to just design prettiness and nice designs which you look and you like it, but it's much more than that. It's actually about to design the technical and functional part of each product, I think. So we can consume less and we can save money, we can save materials, and we can save our nature and the environment. I think the most important part to me as a designer in the sustainable fashion is to follow the modular and transformable design, because you can use a product just with two or three different models. So you don't need to have, for example, three garments. You can have just one, and you can use it in three different ways. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious about your opinions and Iman's and Maryam's opinions.
Mm-hmm. All right. And now, there
industry.
are a lot of companies producing cheap clothes with the cheap labor as well.
Yeah,
So is sustainable
fast
fashion
fashion.
more expensive? And what choices can consumers make to be sustainable on a budget? Let's start with Iman.
Yes, I think yeah, sustainable fashion in theory is really expensive because we are we will take, we will have to grow things in their natural process. We're not going to, uh, first of all, before I elaborate on that, I just want to, like clarify that sustainable fashion, because a lot of people are confused and they mistaken sustainable fashion as organic fashion, something that is grown organically or in an organic environment.
Mm-hmm.
Sustainable fashion, as Regine mentioned, is so broad, and it's really it's a cycle. We have to understand the cycle of how things are produced. For example, we take the example of jeans. When we how we make jeans, right? So we grow cottons, and then a lot of those environmental people or movements are criticizing the production of jeans, because it takes a lot of metrics of tons of water to produce one jeans, right? And then what we don't understand is, if we compare it to okay, we will talk about, I will itemize first how we are utilizing this, and from that jeans into the end product, into the consumer, and then from the consumer, how it will be utilized by, like, after we after the consumer utilized it, and where it will end up. Where will it end up, to the landfill right away, or will it be, well, or can we still recycle it?
Mm-hmm. All
Mm.
right. Well, I had no idea that it takes tons of water just to produce one denim jeans. That just goes to show you that with so many jeans out there in the market, how much water is actually being used and where is this water coming from? Regine, is this more expensive? Sustainable fashion, is it more expensive? And what choices can we as consumers make to sustainable budget? What can we do?
I think as the designer, Iman is the expert, but as a
Hmm.
semi observer, I can only tell you where the things that I've observed. And I think generally in the world of sustainability, the main challenge is not so much the resources, but the paradigm shift,
Hmm.
wherein it means that it's expensive because industries are very used to a certain way of doing things. But if you come to think of it, if there's so much fabric waste in the world, then it should be much cheaper to actually go sustainable because there is already so much waste. and
Hmm.
and that is exactly why the startup social entrepreneurs that I mentioned earlier are willing to be innovative, creative, think outside the box to see how they can reuse and upscale plastic or all sorts of waste into something more productive. So I mean, it's a challenge to systematize how to expand this on a broader scale, or maybe in and of itself, mass production is maybe essentially there's something inherently wrong with it. But um, I just want my observation is just that it's about a paradigm shift. It's
Hmm.
just if there's so much waste, then it seems impossible that this couldn't be a more efficient way of doing things.
Hmm. Mariam, what choices can consumers make to be sustainable on a budget?
Okay, I think we have to consider even the culture of every country about the sustainable fashion. For example, in my country, Iran, it's not so good for people. It's not really nice to have reconsumed clothes and to reconsume them. They only want to get new clothes, and it's a part of our culture, unfortunately. And it takes time to change it. But I think one solution in this case would be to somehow eliminate the sizing, because the sizing is one of factors which makes us to produce more and to consume more. But if we eliminate this item, this factor, the factor of sizing, maybe we can, I think, we can produce less and we can consume by more people. For example, I can utilize one garment, and my mother, which has another size, which chooses another size, maybe bigger size, can utilize the same garment, so we can use our garment sometimes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be an idea, I think, a solution. And I think that using the sustainable materials, it's not always good, because you're going to use, as Iman mentioned, you are going to always use too many water to grow the cotton and the natural materials like that. So using them is somehow damaging the nature again. You know, the circle goes back and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I should put it in.
Mm-hmm. Well, we need to reduce,
What do you think?
reuse, and recycle. Those are the 3 R's that we must consider, not just in the fashion industry, but in every industry. Ladies, let's take a quick break and we will continue thereafter. Please stay with us.
Media.
لا تقل لوحدي أو كيف السبيل.
Humanity sets the agenda.
Meet the refugee children of Syria and Palestine in South Africa this August.
I see the yellow like a sunflower smile.
Join the Africa Muslims Agency's One Child, One Dream event in your area.
For Allah has given me a cotton candy sky.
Spend time with the kids learning about the Iman School of Excellence in Lebanon.
The blue sky is blue like.
Find us at an event in Durban, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Newcastle, Port Elizabeth, and Pietermaritzburg. Visit africamuslimsagency.co.za for more information. Africa Muslims Agency, commemorating 35 years of empowering, educating, inspiring.
Give charity without delay, for it stands in the way of calamities. For child-headed households in Bloemendal in the Eastern Cape, the daily diet consists of white bread and a carton of cheap juice or sugar water, known locally as the poppy water diet. Make a difference to that one child or family. The Al-Fida Foundation has over the past 13 years worked on the ground and gathered the largest database in the Eastern Cape region of Muslim Zakah recipients. Phone our offices at 041 484 1288 or visit our website at www.alfida.co.za. The Al-Fida Foundation, your social investment partner in the Eastern Cape.
The Syrian crisis has raged for over 4,000 days. 4,000 days of suffering, displacement, hunger, and intolerable insecurity. With your help, Islamic Relief can continue to stand alongside them. Never has your support been so important. Together, we can stand with the Syrian people. We can help them build a better future. Will you continue to stand with the people of Syria? Please, donate now.
For a long time, we've lived in a centralized world, where institutions held the all-important data and confirmed all transactions. Those times are over. Welcome to Libertas Group, a blockchain development company boasting an ecosystem that continually redefines the way we do business. Our blockchain is decentralized, making it immune to hacking or alteration, putting the power back in your hands with no middleman so you can focus on the growth of your business. Libertas, the simplest investment choice you'll make.
Kids these days are smart, and when you're competing for their attention against their smartphones, you need to make smart choices, like using Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil in every meal you make. It's naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether you're cooking, frying, or baking, you get the great tasting results that'll get their attention faster than the latest app. And if that doesn't work, change the Wi-Fi password. Sunfoil. Now we're cooking.
With so many investment options today, it's only natural that you might feel a little confused which route to take. Should I buy shares or should I invest in gold bullion? Randery Jewelers now brings you the Zahab coin, an alternative to the Kruger Rand. The Zahab coin, a solid wealth protector in its purest form of 24-karat gold, is the safest way to protect your wealth. So don't just sit there and watch your paper money depreciate. Change to gold. Call Randery Jewelers now at 031 202 4701 or visit www.rjcoin.co.za. Situated at 151 Essenwood Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust. Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media, and today we are talking sustainable fashion with our experts in the fashion industry. We have Iman Montayre from Philippines, Maryam Avesta from Iran, and Regine Guevara from the Philippines as well. Ladies, thank you for staying with us. Let me get to you, Regine. You recently had an event in Marrakesh, the Sustainable Modest Fashion event. Tell us about that event. What was the purpose of this event?
Thank you, Maryam. I think it was a really pleasant experience where we tried to explore how we can use fashion in all of the five across all of the five pillars that I mentioned. So we had Aziza, her first Laha, who is a Moro fashion designer from the Philippines, and she's very strong on the people aspect. Like she works closely with indigenous peoples, rural women, in fact, single mothers who weave the tribal patterns that she uses to make abayas and uh, dresses basically in her atelier shop. And then she did a hybrid event fashion show where they did a hybrid collection with a Moroccan designer who is Huda Al Faidis, and she's more into the traditional sustainable fashion bit where she upcycles fashion waste. She's strong in the environment advocacy. Even with her team, like they're very conscious about the energy and the water that they use in despite being being a startup and being in a smaller office. So it's a home based startup. So they both these ladies were learning from each other, exchanging their cultures, and at the same time, it was a conversation around our shared histories between Moro and Morocco. It was all part of the peace process after the Spanish colonization, and now that we had a peace process in the Philippines. So fashion, because it's an everyday part of life, it's a way of life, and it becomes a conversation starter for bigger things, you know. And actually, what was not expected was that we're coming in from both of us in a modest fashion world, Aziza and I, and of course, you know, she's traditionally hijabi, and we didn't realize that the other counterpart is actually even a very modern spectrum of fashion. So when they had to meet in the table and see how will they create a hybrid collection, it was a very rich discourse about, like where to draw the lines and like try to understand each other's context, like why do they design the way they do. For instance, on one hand, there was conversations around how hot it is in Marrakesh. It's like 40 degrees Celsius there right now. And then I'm talking also about appreciating tradition on the other hand. So this is a format that we plan to continue in Asia TV and Africa TV studios in the spirit of strengthening Asia Africa partnerships, and see that maybe in the future we'll have Moro or Filipino and South Africa, right? And then also with the rest of the countries in the region.
Hmm. Wow, mashallah. Back to our discussion on sustainability and modest fashion. Iman, do you think that the future of clothing or the future of fashion as a fashion designer yourself is sustainable?
Yes, it can be sustainable. Actually, fashion has been doing great job in eliminating waste. The
Mm-hmm.
petroleum products that the byproducts of petroleum are being used in creating stretch fabrics such as lycra, spandex, and other synthetic fabrics. Otherwise, those waste products could end up somewhere, either in the rivers or in dumped into soil, which can also pollute the soils. And yes, I believe that fashion can be sustainable, and we've been doing that. And what we need to do now is to do more, I think, in the marketing, instead of showing sustainable fashion as something like niche or something like not trendy. Like we're focusing sustainable fashion in recycling only. Why not we
Mm-hmm.
make sustainable fashion as the new luxury? Be like Dior, be like the brand Dior. Maria Grazia Chiuri has already demonstrated to us how she utilized the sustainable methods of making embroideries. She also went to Morocco to get those very ancient way of printing from a very remote village even. So I think the challenge here is for designers around the world to adopt something like that, and we promote sustainable fashion and put it up there along with what we consider as luxury, because people love luxury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, definitely luxury is a big seller. So if the big brands can actually come on board, then they could actually be the driving force of sustainable fashion.
Exactly,
Uh,
yeah.
Mariam, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
All right, fantastic. How can consumers start to make the switch to sustainable fashion?
Sorry, you mean about my product?
No, in general, what can consumers do to
In
switch
general,
to
yeah.
sustainable fashion?
Okay, I got that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I agree with Iman actually. I think the fashion designers have the duty to not to follow the trends, because since the trends came in the fashion industry, the consumer is going over and over, and so we are just consuming, and we are not. I think when I'm talking about the general people, the people are not thinking about the future of the nature of the environment, and they don't even know why they are buying too many clothes or too many fashion products. It's not just about the clothes, about all different items that fashion is producing. I think we have to work on the culture of different people of all the world, to not to follow the trend all the time, but instead they have to. I think we have to know our body and to know what products we really like and which product is suitable for each of us. So we can just buy the exact product that we like and buy less and consume exactly what we like. And as I said before, I think using the functionality and transformable fashion could be a very nice solution in this case. Because the luxury, yes, I agree with Iman, but luxury is expensive, so not every people can afford it. I think we have to try to find another solution. Maybe one person can spend a little much more money to buy one product, but that product can have a role of 3 or 4 other garments. So she or he can just wear it in different ways. And in this case, she or he does not have to buy 5 garments. We can just buy one and use it instead of 4 or 5 garments, I think. Could be an idea that we could follow seriously. Yeah.
Okay, and still with you, Maryam, if you could make one change in your own industry to make it better, what would that be? What would that change be?
Okay, I think I would change the trends for good, because the trends are just trying to make people to think that they are not that good, that they are not that beautiful, and they have to change their wardrobe every year, and even about the clothes, about the colors. People think that this color is not the color of the year, so I have to get it away. But this is not true. This is just the capitalism of this world, I think, that makes people to just to consume and not to be able to save money even in this case. I believe.
All right, and Regine, same question to you. If you could make one change in your industry to make it better, what would that change be?
I think it would be to be more open to dialogue and exchanging, learning more, having more a listening ear, to learn from each other. You were talking about the three P's: the reduce, reuse, recycle. I would add rethink. So, as I was mentioning a while ago, it's most of the time it's about paradigm shift, not only when it comes to waste, but also when it comes to cultures, like how different cultures express themselves in fashion. I was just talking about the differences in the modest fashion industry a while ago, while we were trying to create a hybrid collection between two different cultures. um in For example, one of my favorite verses is وَجَعَلْنَكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, and we were created into different nations, divided into different
Mm-hmm.
nations, so we can get to know each other. So I
Mm-hmm.
think like being open to diversity and inclusion, while at the same time um, knowing our purpose, like knowing our goals and where we draw the lines, what's shared and what's not. But the world is wide. Like there's so much to learn from each other, and I appreciate conversations like this, where because it's not always the case, like there are a lot of people in the community, even around the world, which is exactly why there is in both sides extremism, and in all sides actually this lack of openness and dialogue. It's always been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I think also, like you mentioned, rethink. We need to rethink the way we produce fashion, the way we market fashion, the way we buy fashion as well. And Iman, same question to you as well. What would you do to change your industry to make it better?
I think we should stop producing textile. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
We have so much waste already. We have like 3 trillion tons of fabrics, and they've been talking about, we're not going to use any more of those fabrics. And what are we going to do with those fabrics? Instead, I think what we should do is we stop producing, and we just use what we have already produced
Mm-hmm.
and make something out of it. And whatever, like the waste, the extra surplus clothing that we have that we couldn't sell for the
Mm-hmm.
last 10 years, it's time for us to upcycle them and recycle.
Exactly. And then we can there's so much that you can actually do with those
Yeah,
extra pieces of fabric. You can make accessories, you can make jewelry, etc. I mean,
true.
it
Mm.
just needs a creative eye. And me myself being in the fashion industry as well, I find it difficult for me to throw away those little scraps and pieces of fabric, because I'm always like, but I can use it somewhere somehow, and I have found another way to make use of them, alhamdulillah. So I guess we can also do that, because 3 trillion tons of fabric waste is a lot. The numbers are too high, and they definitely need to be reduced. Ladies, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining me on this discussion today. And I wish you well in your future endeavors. Have a lovely evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you also.
Alaikum salam. Thank you.
Right, those were my guests for the panel discussion today. Iman Montayre, fashion designer, as well as the founder of the first Philippines Modest Fashion Week. Maryam Nelofa Avesta from Iran, also a fashion designer, and Regine Guevara from the Philippines, fashion contributor and industry expert, and also a founder of Asia TV and Africa TV. We're talking about sustainable and eco-friendly fashion. You can leave your comments in at the comment section, or send them to us on WhatsApp. The number is 061 766 0355. We need to be more open to dialogue, as uh, Regine has mentioned, and she added there to rethink, to the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and also to rethink. And lots of fabric waste that we need to reduce. If you are in the fashion industry, What are you doing? How are you playing your role in reducing this fabric waste? Because 3 trillion tons is a lot of waste. If we think about it, and fashion is the second largest polluting industry in the world, we have to reduce the numbers. Although fashion looks good, but we need to make it sustainable and eco-friendly as well. So thank you for joining us on this panel discussion, and we will be right back.